Ohio, Dr. Christopher Osborn was murdered while he was asleep, and his wife is the main suspect. Back to the sleeping husband murder trial. On the stand now, a forensic pathologist who examined Chris's autopsy. Let's get you back into court.
We had started to talk about gunshot wound A, and I wanted to get these photographs up there so we could figure out. So which one of these wounds is gunshot wound A?
So the wound which was labeled as gunshot wound A was the one to the right mandible, right here. So this was labeled as A in the report.
Okay. All right. So then getting back to the report and gunshot wound A, can you describe, or I guess continue on with the findings made by Dr. Poyman? I think you were just describing where it was, and then that's when we put the slideshow up. So what did Dr. Poyman find about the entrance wound, or anything noted about the entrance?
Per Dr. Poyman's report, the gunshot wound A, which is to the right side of his mandible, Mr. Osborn's mandible, you can see that there is a hole right here, and you can also see small red abrasions, which is basically small marks around the hole. These are called as stippling, and he calls them as wide-spaced stippling. So they're not close by, they're actually covering a larger area around the gunshot wound. And he calls this wound as an intermediate range.
Okay. So stippling. You just described what stippling was, that it's that red stuff that's kind of, or black or red, that's almost like tattooed on the skin?
That's correct.
Okay. And so when you say intermediate range, what does that mean?
So when we are describing gunshot wounds, we will be describing them as contact range, or intermediate range, or distant range, or distant meaning indeterminate. So intermediate range in this particular case means that it's not a contact, meaning that muzzle of the gun is not touching the skin. So it's not touching the skin, meaning, and there's no abrasion, there's no soot. There's just a little bit of gunpowder, which is around the hole. So intermediate happens after a few inches when the muzzle of the gun is away from the skin. So it's not close by, it's not in contact, it's a little away, and it is causing a specific pattern. So the pattern which is caused by that bullet as it goes through is by the gunpowder, which is also following that bullet. So when the gunpowder comes in, it disperses. Because if it was close and in contact with the skin, then it would not disperse, it'll go right in. So the further the gun is away from the skin, the more dispersion of the gunpowder happens. And that actually will deposit on the skin, and that causes intermediate range. At some point, usually around about 18 inches and all, you don't see any gunpowder. So what happens, and that's like typical for a handgun, you won't see it, so that at that point if we don't see any kind of stippling or any soot or anything else, then we call it indeterminate range. That means we do not know what the range of that gun was. So in this case, because we saw stippling and it was a wide space stippling, Dr. Poyman called it an intermediate range.
Okay. And so we can't say for sure how far away that was, but I think you described a few inches away up to, you said, almost 18 inches away?
Yes.
Okay. What does it mean to say that the skin defect has an eccentric abrasion margin? Is what Dr. Poyman said in his report. What does that mean?
Eccentric abrasion margin, basically abrasion means there's a scrape on the skin. So as the bullet enters the skin, it will enter at an angle. So when it enters, so normally what happens is it will not enter perpendicular. So if whatever angle it enters in, that it scrapes the skin as it's entering. So that is something we see in the entrance wounds. That's an eccentric abrasion, meaning this particular gun, the bullet entered at an angle.
Okay. You go to State's Exhibit K14. Is that what we're kind of looking at here? This eccentric abrasion that was described in State's Exhibit K14.
All right, K14 exhibit, you can see that there's redness going on here. That is what he's describing as an abrasion around here.
Okay. State's Exhibit K15. Is that just another angle of that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe the path that Dr. Poyman noted that a gunshot wound traveled as it entered into Christopher Osborn?
Yes. The gunshot wound A, which was on the right side of the mandible jawline for Mr. Osborn, traveled through the soft tissues of the cervical neck, basically to the right side of his neck, went through, hit the mandible, fractured it. Hold on, let me just. So it fractured the right mandible, traveled through the soft tissues of the cervical neck, did not hit any artery or any kind of vein, any jugular vein, and continued going, and it was recovered from the left posterior neck.
Okay. Did it strike anything when it was going through?
It struck the mandible.
Okay. Did it strike the spine as well?
It actually, so let me just read this. And it struck the right lateral aspect of high cervical spine and continues within the posterior neck. So I'm going to say it again. It went from the right side of the mandible, right jawline, continued in, hit the right high cervical spine, which is around C1 to C4. That is what the high cervical spine is, and continued going across, and it was recovered on the left side of the neck.
Still with us, attorney Philip Dubé. Philip, 3 shots. The first 2 gunshots, A and B, would have been fatal by themselves. How important is this witness? And I think that we have lost Philip Dubé. So what we are going to do is reset. We're going to take a break. We need to squeeze one in anyway. When we come back, we're going to continue our coverage. And again, we're bringing you this because we felt it was too compelling not to bring to you, although it happened during the Darrell Brooks trial. We'll be right back.
Did someone hurt him?
I don't know. She said he's dead. She's an RN.
Okay.
But she's intoxicated.
She's intoxicated?
Yes.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott, honored to be with you. Today we are airing testimony from the sleeping husband murder trial in Ohio. Prosecutors say that Holly Osborn shot and killed her husband, Chris, after discovering that he had been texting with another woman. The trial actually played out while we were covering the Darrell Brooks case, but we thought it was too good not to share. So let's get back to testimony. On the stand now is a forensic pathologist, Dr. Maneesha Pandey.
State's Exhibit K9. What are we looking at here?
So Exhibit K9, you can see the photograph of Christopher Osborn's top of his head and a number which is under the gunshot wound, which is on the right side top of the head. Here you can actually see 2 defects in the skin. You can see one which is a round with an eccentric abrasion right here. That's the redness, and then there's a hole right in the center where my pointer is. And then you can see another slit-like defect right on the middle of his top of the head, which is right here,
Okay.
on the top of the head.
Now, this gunshot wound that's being shown in State's Exhibit K9, is that a gunshot wound B?
Yes,
Okay.
that was labeled as wound B.
Okay. So describe Dr. Poyman's findings as it relates to gunshot wound B.
So gunshot wound B was described as a wound of top of the head with an entrance on the right side of the top of the head. This was also associated with an eccentric abrasion. There was some kind of a slit-like tear on the wound. So it is associated with disruption of the superior aspect of right and left parietal lobes. So that's when he says that it goes through the skin into the skull and enters the brain, hits the top portion of the brain, which is the right and the left parietal lobes. Those are the topmost lobe areas of the brain, goes through, and it causes some fractures of the skull. It causes subdural and subarachnoid hemorrhages along the areas of the disruption of the brain. It then exits on the top. It continues going up, and then there's this, it's called a keyhole injury in terms of that it enters at a very tangential angle, so there's an entrance and an exit at the same time on that hole. That's something I'm not sure whether we'll get to see those other photographs, but it entered through there. It partially exited on the top of the head and continued going through the brain and was recovered on the left side of his head.
Okay.
So this was a penetrating wound.
Let's go to State's Exhibit K10. K10. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Exhibit K10, here you can actually see the eccentric abrasion again. You see this is how you can see the top of his right ear, right? So it's actually entering from the right side into the skin. It continued going there, caused fracture of the underlying bone right there under that skin. And you see the slit-like, which is actually termed as like a partial exit almost. It's an exit. So a portion of the projectile came out of here, and the bullet continued going inside towards the left side of the head.
Okay. So essentially the bullet fragments when it hits the skull and fractures the skull, and a small portion shoots out that little slit-like injury that we see in State's Exhibit K10, and the rest of the projectile continues on and then lodges in the left side of the head, the brain, or whatever?
Yes, left side of the head.
So then State's Exhibit K19, what are we looking at there?
Exhibit K19 is close-up view of Mr. Osborn's right side of his nose. Here you can see that there is a redness right on the base of the right side of the nose. You can see this as it's entering. There's a hole right there. So that is a gunshot wound.
Okay. Is there also stippling observed in State's Exhibit K19?
K19 does not have that much stippling. There is some kind of dots which are right here. They're probably as a result of the wound which was on the right mandible. So they were spaced out. So there's some dots. You can appreciate some kind of stippling on the periphery on the outside.
Okay. So most of the stippling that was observed was attributed to gunshot wound A. But gunshot wound A and gunshot wound C are kind of close together in the face area, correct?
Yes, so this wound on the right side of the nose is the C, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So then, why don't you go ahead and tell us what the associated findings were for gunshot wound C?
So a gunshot wound C, per Dr. Poyman's report, was at the base of the nose on the right side. It went through the nose across to the left side underneath the nasal septum and came out as a defect to the left side of the nose.
Okay. Let's go to State's Exhibit K20. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit K20?
So Exhibit K20 is a photograph of Mr. Osborn's left side of his face, and here you can appreciate that there is a defect on the left side of the nose. So it had entered on the right side and went across the nose and came out over here to the left side of the nose. So that's a gunshot wound, exit gunshot wound.
So almost like through and through the nose.
Yes.
Okay. And then upon your review of the police reports, they recovered a bullet. In addition to the fragment in the headboard, they also recovered a bullet in the mattress underneath where the body was, correct?
That's correct.
What was Dr. Poyman's findings? What did he rule this as?
Per Dr. Poyman's report, the cause of death for Mr. Osborn was determined to be gunshot wounds of the head and neck, and the manner of death was determined to be homicide.
Okay. Why? Well, we'll get to that here in a minute. So as part of your preparation for coming down to testify in this case and reviewing this, did you also prepare a report summarizing your review of Dr. Poyman's work?
That's correct.
Okay. Dr. Pandey, I'm going to hand you the marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit N2. N2. Do you recognize State's Exhibit N2?
Yes.
What is State's Exhibit N2?
State's Exhibit N2 is a report prepared by me for purposes of this trial from Dr. Poyman's autopsy report, coroner's report, scene photos, toxicology report, coroner investigation reports, postmortem radiologic findings, as well as law enforcement reports and documents.
Those are all the materials that you reviewed in order to come in and testify about this?
That's correct.
Okay. Was there any difference in your report versus the report that Dr. Poyman issued?
No, there was no significant difference.
Okay. Was the only difference that penetrating versus perforating distinction?
That's correct.
Okay. Ultimately, after reviewing all the materials that you've testified that you did review, what is your opinion as to the cause of death and the manner of death in this case?
So after reviewing all the documents and the photographs, my opinion was that Mr. Osborn died of gunshot wounds of head and neck, and manner of death is homicide, and it's agreeing with Dr. Poyman's report.
Okay. Is that opinion or based on or made with a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Okay. Why homicide and not suicide?
Because the wounds, first of all, there were 3 wounds. Then secondly, there was, it was not close contact. It was not touching the skin. There was intermediate range. And they were two different, very high fatal kind of injuries. In terms of high cervical neck was hit. That would cause the person to be paralyzed. The top of the head was hit. That can cause person to die also. So between the both of them, they were fatal injuries.
Okay. And so although we can't determine the order in which these gunshot wounds were received, a combination of any of these, you're not going to get to that 3rd gunshot wound.
You can't get to that, and then the combination of these, like the fact that there were these 3 and where they were located and what they injured, it's difficult to do self-infliction of those wounds.
Philip Dubé still with us. I was noticing the defendant's behavior. To me, she was acting a little differently, Philip. She was looking down. She didn't look at the witness. She wasn't looking at autopsy photos. A reminder to our viewers, the jury, the gallery, were looking at autopsy photos. But of course, given the graphic nature, we're not going to show those here on Court TV. But the defendant, how do you think she was acting, Philip?
Well, my hunch is she can't bear to look at it. She can't bear to see what she's done. I mean, if we're all honest here, this is clearly a homicide. There's no way that the good doctor could have shot himself 3 times. The first shot alone would have completely incapacitated him, and he would have been unable to shoot 2 more times. So that's silly. Not to mention the fact that you have the intermediate range of the gun away from the head. And there's no evidence that there was a third party coming into the house at that hour, unless you know, not to jump the shark here, attribute it to the tooth fairy coming in there. It's ridiculous. It's silly. So you don't have an alternative theory. What I think the good nurse should have done is put on a voluntary manslaughter type defense to show that this was heat of passion. She snapped. She lost it when she realized that the good doctor was cheating on her. He was playing mind games, you know, probably telling her, you know, that he loves her, and yet there's another woman. It's this come here, go away, push me, pull me type attitude. There's like a metronome ticking in the background, like a bomb going off. And before you know it, boom, she snaps. That's a great defense, and it carries up to 11 years.
And I wonder if the intoxication could add into that narrative if she had chosen to go that direction, because we know from the father, when she called the father the next morning, he even said to law enforcement, she's intoxicated. Philip, we have to take a quick break. I can continue talking to you all day, but we want to finish up next with today's testimony in the murder trial of Holly Osborn. The forensic expert will talk about stippling around a gunshot wound. And finally, we will look ahead to the suitcase murder trial out of Florida. An alleged game of hide and seek ended up with a boyfriend being suffocated.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the latest developments in the disappearance of baby Quentin Simon. It's been over 3 weeks since the 20-month-old was reported missing. We have teams reporting live from Savannah, Georgia, with every update. And on the docket, parents of the Oxford school shooter due back in court tomorrow. How will their son's guilty plea impact their upcoming trial?
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
We are continuing our coverage of the sleeping husband murder trial. Holly Osborn, the wife, is accused of fatally shooting her husband, Chris, in his sleep back in July of 2018. Being cross-examined on the stand now as a forensic pathologist, she is detailing Christopher's gunshot wounds. Let's go back into court.
So K19. You recognize that photo?
Yes, that's a photograph of Mr. Osborn's gunshot wound off the right side of his nose.
And that's what we've been discussing as gunshot wound C?
That's correct.
Now, do you have the Dr. Poyman's report as well as your report up next to you? And in both Dr. Poyman's report, when he discusses gunshot wound C, he states there's no stippling that appears to be related to this gunshot wound. Similar.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry.
Is that correct? That I'll repeat in case it got muffled. That in his report, as it relates to gunshot wound C, there is no stippling that appears to be related to this gunshot wound. That's that last sentence of that paragraph. You see that?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And in your report, as it relates to gunshot wound C, the third sentence states stippling was not present in the surrounding skin.
Yes.
So I just want to be clear, are we saying now that stippling is present, or was it just perhaps an abrasion you saw that when the photo was shown, but you don't believe that stippling was present to this wound?
So the stippling which was seen in the photograph which we saw, that is probably from the wide spaced out stippling from the right side of the jaw. So it's going across. So because you don't see any other stippling wound to this particular one. Okay. So as a result of which this was not attributed to this wound. Okay.
So we are still qualifying this as an indeterminate range gunshot wound.
That's correct.
Okay. Instead of wounds A and B were intermediate range gunshot wounds.
Yes.
Which I believe you testified intermediate falling somewhere, we don't know exactly where, from 3 inches or a few inches to perhaps 18 inches.
For handgun, yes.
Distance-wise?
Distance-wise,
Yes. Okay. So, and then that indeterminate range, we really have no idea how to be able to assess the distance. Could be 19, 20, 21, 3 feet. Is that accurate? Okay. There is no finding after indeterminate, right? There's no very indeterminate or even further out.
Yeah, we don't know.
Dr. Poyman's report was completed on September 4th of 2018, correct?